June 1st, 1987. 16-year-old Theresa Bier is picked up by her significantly older neighbor, Russel Skip Welch, 43, telling her uncle he is going to give her a lift to her high school in Fresno, California. But in reality, despite their age difference, Skip and Theresa had arranged to go on a camping trip together. Driving out to Shut-Eye Peak, around 25 miles north of Bass Lake, the unlikely duo had one mission in mind: to search for the ever-elusive Bigfoot. Later that day, Theresa's uncle received a call from her high school, notifying him that she had not shown up for her classes. Concerned, Theresa's uncle alerted the authorities and filed a missing person report at 9:30 that evening when she still had not returned. Sadly, Theresa would never be seen again after departing with Skip. Skip provided various, changing explanations to the authorities about why she had disappeared, eventually settling on the claim that she had been abducted during their trip. But it wasn't a human who had taken Theresa, according to him. She had been abducted by Bigfoot. Although Skip was arrested and interrogated, he was later released, and to this day, no trace of Theresa has ever been discovered, and no one has ever been held accountable for her vanishing. After over 3 decades, one question still haunts this strange case. Was Theresa Bier really kidnapped by Bigfoot? Born on April 16, 1971 to Shirley and David Bier, Theresa's short life prior to her vanishing was sadly filled with pain, adversity, and abuse. At 3 years old, she was removed from her parents' care by social services, citing instances of abuse, particularly at the hands of her mother, Shirley. Shirley had twisted her daughter's leg around her crib until it fractured, leading to her hospitalization where a number of rib fractures and other injuries indicative of physical abuse were discovered. As a result, alongside her sister, Vicky, Theresa was put into foster care. A few years later, her father, David, having divorced Shirley, filed for custody of Theresa and surprisingly was granted it. But after relocating to Southern California to live with her father and his new wife, Margie Richmond, Theresa once again faced abuse. According to reports, her stepmom Margie was extremely unpleasant and neglectful. For example, she would lock the refrigerator, refuse to give Theresa food, and taunt her by eating in front of her while she was starving. Strangely, Margie had previously been married to Theresa's birth mother, Shirley's brother, John Blind Johnny Richmond, with whom she had 2 sons. Eventually, Theresa returned to Fresno in the custody of her biological uncle, Blind Johnny, the ex-husband of her abusive stepmom. 42 years old, Blind Johnny had lost his eyesight during a game of Russian roulette, though some have claimed he exaggerated how little he could see. When Theresa moved in with him, he was living with a 17-year-old girlfriend called Tamara Newman. Blind Johnny was known to the local police due to his role in fencing stolen property. He was also known to force Theresa to miss school so she could babysit his 2 sons. But, more disturbingly, it has also been claimed that she was sexually abused by him while in his care, and he would even let his friends abuse her too. 16 years old, Theresa was near the end of her freshman year at high school, making her notably older than most of her peers. Her teachers described her as immature and a slow learner, enrolling her in a special education class, characteristics most likely influenced by the constant trauma she had experienced. By all accounts, Theresa was let down by everyone in her life, and not a single person provided her with protection, love, or the safety of a real home. In early June, Theresa told some of her school friends that she was going to skip school to go on a camping trip to the mountains with a man she'd recently met, Russel Skip Welch. Skip, a house painter who primarily relied on disability checks for income, was obsessed with Bigfoot, claiming he'd encountered the legendary cryptid multiple times and was determined to uncover proof of its existence in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Skip was also a meth addict, having struggled to cope after his wife Shannon died from a drug overdose. There are differing reports on whether Theresa's uncle was aware of Skip's intentions to take her on the camping trip to search for Bigfoot. While most parental figures would obviously not allow a 16-year-old to go on a camping trip alone with a significantly older meth addict, given how unpleasant and abusive Blind Johnny was, it doesn't seem out of character that he'd allow it. Whether he actually knew about their intentions or not remains unclear. What is clear, however, is that on June 1st, 1987, Theresa was picked up by Skip outside of her house, embarked on a journey into the mountains, and was never seen or heard from again. Prior to heading into the mountains, Skip made an unexpected stop at the home of his daughter, Chandra Welch, after encountering an issue with his old Chevrolet Monte Carlo. Later that morning, Blind Johnny received a call from Theresa's high school, inquiring about her absence. Blind Johnny chose to lie to the school, claiming Theresa was at home and feeling unwell, before spending the rest of the day searching for her himself. He would later claim that he wanted to handle the situation himself and not involve law enforcement, likely due to his past clashes with the local authorities. By 9:30 that evening, Blind Johnny contacted the Fresno police and reported Theresa missing. Although Theresa's uncle had reported her missing the same day she disappeared, it took nearly a week for them to locate Skip for questioning. In the meantime, as they attempted to track Skip down, they began interviewing his friends and family to try and find out any information about what might have happened. Skip's daughter, Chandra, informed the police that she had seen her father with a young girl on June 1st before they set out for a camping trip, but she did not know who the girl was. It was assumed the girl she'd seen was Theresa. They also spoke to 17-year-old Michelle Ryan, who was an acquaintance of Skip. Michelle told the police that last summer Skip had tried to convince her to go to the mountains with him, but she had been warned not to by Chandra. Supposedly, Chandra had told her that her father liked to lure young girls to the mountains, drug them, and have sex with them. Despite warnings, Michelle decided to accompany Skip, though fortunately she had the foresight to bring along 2 male friends for protection. This precaution proved crucial as Michelle suspected she was drugged during the trip. She recounted screaming in fear, feeling her life was in danger as she nearly slipped off a cliff before being saved by one of her friends. Finally, on June 5th, Skip's Chevrolet Monte Carlo was found parked near a trailer park close to North Fork, a small community at the foothills leading to the Shutai Peak region of the Sierra National Forest. Skip had driven down from the mountains to visit his friend Dorothy Davis, who lived nearby. Days later, Dorothy informed authorities that Skip appeared distraught and possibly under the influence when he arrived. He spoke about a girl he had left in the mountains, claiming she had been taken by a satanic cult and had physically transformed into something all-white-looking. Dorothy had dismissed his claims, believing he was high and experiencing delusions. Soon after, authorities were able to finally locate Skip at his mother's home in Sunnyside, Fresno, and arrested him for questioning. Initially, Skip claimed that he had dropped Theresa off at school, exactly as he'd said he was going to, on June 1st. But given the high school had already reported that she never showed up that day, this claim was instantly disproven. So Skip altered his story, this time stating that yes, he had gone camping with her in search of Bigfoot, but Theresa had run off into the woods with another young woman. Before long, this story changed yet again when he told them that she had actually left with another group of campers. Throughout the interrogation, Skip frequently began ranting about Bigfoot without provocation, asserting a belief that a large population of them resided in the mountain caves. Finally, Skip settled on his most elaborate story yet. Theresa had been abducted by Bigfoot on their camping trip after they encountered the creatures in the forest. Supposedly, during the interrogations, Skip offered up, without being prompted, that if they discovered Theresa, there would be no evidence of sexual assault. He simultaneously denied having sex with her, claiming she was too young and it went against his nature, though implying Theresa had wanted to have sex with him. So to validate his claims, Skip offered to take the detectives to the campsite where the supposed Bigfoot kidnapping had taken place. Interestingly, a few days after Theresa had disappeared, Blind Johnny received a menacing phone call from what he believed was a young woman. This woman warned him that Skip had a pistol he was not afraid to use, and that Blind Johnny should tell the police that Skip had dropped Theresa off at school, where an unknown blonde girl picked her up. The woman then threatened him, saying if he didn't do what she said and continued to cause problems, there would be consequences for both him and his sons. The detectives followed Skip along the edge of a meadow near Browns Creek, towards a small grove of trees. As they approached, they saw a smoldering fire in what looked to be a large burn pit around 3.5 feet wide and 8 feet long. So what had been burnt in this unusually large space? They also found blankets which seemed oddly arranged, some items of clothing, and a camera. On the camera, there were a handful of photos of the wilderness, as well as some of Skip playing guitar near one of the blankets and of Theresa. Yet there was no evidence to support his Bigfoot story. No footprints, no blood, no sign of any sort of creature attack. And the detectives quickly determined that this campsite had been staged by Skip. Looking at the pictures, it was clearly not the same campsite, though he had tried hard to imitate it. Instead, they believed the true campsite to be around 20 miles away, in an area known ominously to locals as Ghost Canyon. Investigators attempted to locate the real campsite using helicopters and tracker dogs, but could not find it with the limited information they had. However, they were able to locate a blue shirt belonging to Skip near the Browns Creek camp, which was found to have meth in one of the pockets. Tracker dogs searching near the camp were also able to pick up the scent of Theresa, but no indication of where she was or what happened to her was ever discovered. Towards the end of June, Skip was arrested and charged with the crimes of child stealing, a term commonly used in the 1980s for kidnapping and child endangerment. But in September 1987, a mere 3 days before his trial was set to begin, Skip was released due to prosecutors believing there was insufficient evidence for them to secure a conviction. The authorities then debated bringing murder charges against him instead. But similarly, they feared there was not enough evidence to secure a conviction by a jury, and due to the double jeopardy clause, if he was acquitted on either charge, they would be unable to prosecute him in the future should new evidence emerge. Skip never stood trial for Theresa's disappearance and potential murder. Similarly, nobody else has ever been charged in the case. No trace of her body, no crime scene, and no evidence indicating an incident ever even occurred has ever been found. So first things first, we need to discuss the elephant in the room, or in this case, the hairy ape in the room. I personally am not opposed to the concept of Bigfoot existing. If there was to be a cryptid that turned out to be real, Bigfoot seems the most likely candidate, and I find some of the videos, images, and witness accounts to be compelling. That said, there appears to be zero evidence in this case of any sort of Bigfoot kidnapping, and the fact that Skip told so many variations of the story before settling on his Bigfoot explanation really makes it difficult for me to take his claims seriously. Law enforcement searched the area Skip claims the Bigfoot colony abducted Theresa and found no evidence of anything at all. No footprints, blood, hair, or any other physical traces. Interestingly, there have been a number of vanishings within the same vicinity that some people have attributed to Bigfoot. For example, James Arthur, a retired military veteran, vanished near Shut-Eye Peak in 2008 while out trekking despite his fitness and survival skills. Similarly, Doug Pierce, a retired nuclear engineer, disappeared in the same area in 2005 without a single trace of evidence for what happened to him ever being found. There are numerous other accounts of missing people in the Sierra Nevada mountains and near Shut-Eye Peak. The Missing 411 series in particular covers many similar cases in national parks where thousands of people seem to vanish without a trace, sometimes being found dead in very confusing and unexplainable ways at some point later. While Bigfoot or something supernatural could be responsible, it seems more likely that these incidents are the result of individuals becoming lost, injured, and tragically succumbing to the elements. While many suspect Skip of murdering Theresa and concealing her body, Skip's family has floated a theory that the speed freak killers abducted and killed her. Although Chandra acknowledged her father's predatory behavior around the time of Theresa's disappearance, she defended him following his arrest, asserting that his only wrongdoing was exercising poor judgment by taking a young girl to the Sierra Mountains. The speed freak killers, comprising Lauren Herzog and Wesley Shermantine, were responsible for a string of murders in California during the 1980s and 1990s, and are believed to have taken the lives of around 72 people, often while under the influence of meth. If you'd like to learn more about them, let me know below, and I'll add them to my list of future cases to explore on the channel. The geographical proximity of Theresa's disappearance to the crimes of the speed freak killers, as well as their history of targeting similar young women, adds some fuel to this theory. After they were arrested, Shermantine disclosed the location of a site dubbed their boneyard, where a vast number of human remains were unearthed. DNA testing was conducted on some of the recovered bones, and so far none of them have been linked to Theresa. However, not all of the remains in the boneyard have been identified yet, so it isn't impossible her remains could be found there. However, if the speed freak killers were truly responsible for abducting Theresa, why would Skip not have mentioned encountering two men in the forest, or witnessing some element of their involvement in her vanishing? And would notorious and ruthless serial killers really have left a witness like Skip unharmed? Given the inconsistencies in his story, it seems hard not to look at Skip as the most likely culprit behind whatever really happened to Theresa. Seeing as methamphetamine was found in his discarded shirt nearby the supposed campsite, is it possible that in a heightened, unstable state, Skip did something terrible to Theresa? Whether pre-planned or accidental, his explanation about her being kidnapped by Bigfoot, as fantastical as it might be, feels like it would hold a little more weight if he'd come out with it from the start. But Skip initially claimed he had dropped her off at school, until he discovered that this was provably incorrect. Then he made up multiple unverifiable stories, including ramblings about a satanic cult, before settling on the Bigfoot narrative. It could be argued he was afraid he wouldn't be taken seriously if he told authorities about the Bigfoot kidnapping, and so tried to come up with explanations that wouldn't force authorities to look at him as a liar and as likely being responsible. But the constant shifting narratives he told really do undermine his credibility. There's also the matter of somebody reportedly making threatening calls to Blind Johnny with the intention of having him and the police look elsewhere from Skip. And let's be blunt here, that's a massive red flag that Skip had something to do with Theresa's vanishing. Then there's the matter of his reported behavior of luring young girls into the mountains to drug them and have sex with them. While this, as deplorable as it might be, doesn't necessarily mean he would kill someone, it does paint his character in a certain questionable light. Ultimately, the tragic and disturbing upbringing Theresa experienced made her an extremely vulnerable individual. And it does look like Skip was just another person to abuse and take advantage of this poor young girl. Whatever Skip's role in her vanishing was, it will sadly never be truly known, as he passed away in 1998 from coronary artery disease. Similarly, Blind Johnny passed away from cancer around 2008. Without the discovery of Theresa's remains or concrete evidence implicating Skip or anyone else in her disappearance, it is unlikely that this case will ever reach a definitive resolution. And with that, our exploration of this strange and unsolved case comes to a close. As always, thanks so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts about this one down in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe and check out some of the other true crime videos on my channel. You have been watching The Mystery Abyss.